It wasn't supposed to happen like this. I didn't expect any of this. When the invitation came, I thought it was just another one of those odd, random occurrences that life throws at you. But by the time I walked into that house, everything had already changed. It was a Wednesday, and like most Wednesdays, I was working late, staring at my computer screen, surrounded by half-empty coffee cups and scattered papers. I'm Nathan, a 32-year-old insurance agent in a small town on the outskirts of Seattle. If you'd asked anyone who knew me before that night, they'd tell you I was a quiet guy. Ordinary, nothing special. My wife, Emma, and I had been married for 5 years. We didn't have a flashy life, but we had a stable one. Or at least, that's what I thought. That Wednesday started like any other. The sun set at 5 p.m., casting an orange glow through our living room window. I could hear Emma in the kitchen, humming some song she was listening to on her phone. She seemed happy, almost too happy, but I didn't think much of it. She was always a little more upbeat when she was cooking. Around 8 p.m., I finished my work for the day. I was ready to relax. I walked into the kitchen and found Emma standing there, chopping vegetables. She smiled at me, but it was that kind of smile where you can tell something's not quite right. I didn't say anything at first. Sometimes, we had those awkward silences in the evening, but it never felt strange. "Hey, Nathan, I need to go out for a bit tonight," Emma said casually, as if she were telling me she was running to the store. "Okay, where are you headed?" I asked, trying not to sound too curious. Emma had started going out more recently, especially on weeknights. I didn't question her, but I felt like something was different. "I'm going to a friend's house. You remember Lily, right? From my book club?" I nodded. Lily was a woman Emma had become friends with through a book club she joined a few months ago. They'd met a couple of times for coffee, but it wasn't like they were super close. "Yeah, I remember her. What's up?" Emma paused, tapping the knife against the counter. "Well, she invited me to hang out for a bit. It's just a small thing, no big deal." "No big deal" was the phrase she often used when she was trying to downplay something. I wasn't sure what it was, but her words felt like a shield, something to cover up the real reason behind her sudden plans. "Okay, well, have fun," I said, giving her a tight smile. "You'll be back soon, right?" She shrugged, the motion so slight that it almost went unnoticed. "Maybe. Not sure yet. I'll text you when I'm on my way home." I watched her grab her purse, the same one she always used, and slip on her shoes. I felt a strange knot form in my stomach, but I ignored it. She kissed me on the cheek, grabbed her coat, and left the house without another word. The house was quiet. It was a Wednesday night, after all. I decided to take a shower, relax for a bit, and maybe watch a show. But my mind kept wandering back to Emma and her odd behavior. She'd been distant lately, more than just the usual tiredness. Something wasn't adding up. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was missing something. The way she'd answered the questions about where she was going felt rehearsed, almost too casual. I should have asked more questions, but I didn't. Around 10 p.m., I got a text from Emma, staying a little longer. "Don't wait up." It wasn't unusual for her to stay out late with friends, but something about that message felt final. It was the kind of text you send when you don't plan on coming home anytime soon. I didn't want to dwell on it, but the feeling in my stomach grew stronger. I sat down on the couch, staring at the screen of my phone. I thought about calling her, but then I stopped myself. She was an adult. She didn't need to report to me every second of the day. I tried to distract myself with work, but it was like the room had become too small, the air too thick. I looked at the clock. 11:30 p.m. Just as I was about to put my phone down, I heard the sound of a car pulling into the driveway. It was Emma's car. My heart skipped a beat. I got up, quickly walking to the front door. I wasn't sure why I felt the need to rush, but I couldn't help myself. When I opened the door, there she was, standing in the doorway with her coat on, her eyes wide like she had just been caught in the middle of something. And standing next to her, almost as if it were the most natural thing in the world, was a man I had never seen before. He was tall, with dark hair, dressed in a suit that looked a little too expensive for a casual night out. His face was unfamiliar, but there was something in the way he stood that made my blood run cold. He looked at me like we were old acquaintances, like he wasn't the least bit worried about how this might look. "Hey, Nathan," Emma said, her voice a little too chipper, almost forced. "This is Daniel. He's a friend of Lily's. We decided to hang out after the book club ended." My heart pounded in my chest. I could feel the confusion building. This wasn't just a friend of Lily's. No, something was off. Why was he here? Why hadn't Emma mentioned him before? Before I could say anything, Emma quickly added, I'll be upstairs in a minute. I just want to grab my things. But the man, Daniel, he didn't leave. He just stood there, watching me. And in that moment, I realized something. Whatever this was, it wasn't just a casual meeting. There was more to this story than Emma was letting on. I stood there, frozen, not knowing what to do, what to say. Something inside me told me to ask the questions, to confront her right then and there. But I didn't. Instead, I let them both disappear into the house, pretending everything was normal. I should have followed them, but I didn't. And that was my first mistake. The silence in the house was suffocating. Emma had gone upstairs with Daniel, and I was left standing in the hallway, staring after them, trying to process what I had just seen. My mind raced, but no clear thoughts could form. This man, Daniel, who was he? And why hadn't Emma told me about him? Why had she lied about staying out longer? And why, in the pit of my stomach, did I feel like I was slowly losing control of everything? I stood there for what felt like an eternity, my mind a whirlwind of questions I had no answers to. I thought about going upstairs to confront Emma. I wanted to yell, to demand an explanation for what was happening, but I couldn't bring myself to do it. I was paralyzed by some strange mix of fear and confusion. Was I just overreacting? Was this all in my head? I sat down on the couch, trying to collect my thoughts, but I couldn't stop replaying the moment over and over in my mind. The way Daniel had looked at me, so casual, like he had been invited into my home, like I was the intruder. It gnawed at me. The air felt heavy, like something was about to break, and I was just standing there, too scared to face it. At some point, I must have dozed off, because when I opened my eyes, it was 3 a.m. I was still on the couch, my neck stiff, the TV quietly playing some random channel. I glanced at my phone, no new messages from Emma. I tried calling her once, but it went straight to voicemail. Something in me snapped. I couldn't wait any longer. I had to know what was going on. I grabbed my phone again, this time texting her, "Where are you?" It felt like such a simple thing to ask, but the words felt heavy, loaded with every suspicion and fear I had been carrying all evening. I waited. Seconds felt like hours. Just as I was about to give up, my phone buzzed with a new message from Emma, in the guest room. "Don't worry, I'll be up soon." I read it over and over again. Something about that reply didn't sit right. Why didn't she come down already? Why was she still in the guest room? The thought of her being alone in that room with Daniel, the man I didn't know, twisted something deep inside me. I had to see for myself. I quietly made my way to the guest room. My heart was racing, each step feeling heavier than the last. When I reached the door, I hesitated. I could hear faint voices coming from inside, but they were muffled. I pressed my ear to the door, straining to make out what was being said. It was Emma's voice, and Daniel's. But the conversation wasn't what I expected. "I didn't think he'd be home tonight," Emma said softly. "You should have told him," Daniel replied, his voice low, almost reassuring. "This can't go on forever." My stomach dropped. I didn't want to hear more, but I couldn't stop myself. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Was this about me? Was she talking about me? The panic inside me started to swell, and I forced myself to pull away from the door before I was discovered. I stepped back, my mind spinning in 1,000 directions. I had no idea what was happening. All I knew was that I couldn't stay in the dark anymore. Something was wrong, something more than just Emma spending late nights out with friends. I walked to the living room, pacing, trying to collect my thoughts. I needed to confront her, to ask her what was going on. But I also didn't want to be the fool who jumped to conclusions without having all the facts. I needed proof. I couldn't let myself be blinded by jealousy, but I knew something wasn't right. Suddenly, my phone buzzed again. A message from Emma. "I'll be upstairs in a minute. Don't wait up." I stared at the message, my heart racing once again. This time, I wasn't going to sit back. I wasn't going to let her think I was a fool. I grabbed my coat, slipped on my shoes, and made my way to the door. I wasn't sure what I was going to do next, but I knew one thing for certain. I couldn't let this go. I had to find out what was happening, even if it meant risking everything. As I stepped out into the night air, I felt a strange sense of clarity wash over me. The world around me felt sharper, the quiet street suddenly suffocating. I could feel the weight of the unknown pressing down on me. I wasn't sure where I was going or what I would find, but I was going to find answers, no matter the cost. I drove through the quiet streets, my headlights cutting through the darkness like a knife. My mind was a whirlwind of thoughts, questions, and suspicions. Where was Emma? Why had she texted me that she'd be up soon when she was still upstairs with Daniel? And why hadn't she come down to say goodnight like she normally did? I didn't have all the answers, but I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being left in the dark, deliberately. I made a sharp turn onto a side road and slowed down, trying to gather my thoughts. I wasn't sure what I was looking for. Was I hoping that by driving around, I'd stumble across something that would make sense of all of this? Or was I just trying to escape the feeling of suffocation inside the house? I couldn't keep lying to myself. Something was going on, and I wasn't part of it. That realization hit me harder than I expected. I always prided myself on being a patient, understanding husband. I trusted Emma, maybe too much. But trust, it seemed, had its limits. And I had crossed that line tonight. I glanced at my phone again. No new messages from Emma. She wasn't answering my calls either. Every minute that ticked by made the weight in my chest grow heavier. It felt like she was shutting me out, like there was a world she was living in that I didn't even know about. I pulled over and parked on the side of the road, my hands gripping the steering wheel. I knew I had to go back to the house, confront Emma, but my mind was screaming at me to just leave it all behind. But I couldn't. I had to know the truth. It was then that I saw the lights. Just a few blocks away, I noticed Emma's car, parked outside a cafe that never stayed open this late. I wasn't sure why I hadn't noticed it earlier. Maybe I was too distracted. But now, seeing her car there, parked under the flickering streetlights, something in me snapped. I parked a few cars down and got out of the car. I wasn't sure what I expected to find when I walked into that cafe, but I knew I had to go inside. I had to confront whatever this was. The cafe wasn't busy. There was a single barista cleaning the counter and a couple sitting by the window. And then, I saw them, Emma and Daniel, sitting together, just the two of them, hunched over a table in the corner. They weren't talking, not in the way you'd expect from a friendly conversation. It was more intimate than that. They were sitting so close to each other, their heads leaning in as they whispered in hushed tones. My heart stopped. I couldn't move. I just stood there, rooted to the spot, watching them like a ghost, unsure of what to do. Every part of me wanted to storm over there, to shout at them, demand answers. But I stayed still, watching, hoping that maybe, just maybe, there was an explanation that would make sense of this. I watched them for what felt like an eternity. Emma reached across the table, brushing her fingers lightly against Daniel's hand. My blood ran cold. I'd seen that gesture before. It was something she did when she was nervous or trying to reassure herself. But this time, it wasn't for me. It wasn't a casual touch. There was something more there, something deeper, and it made my stomach churn. I couldn't take it anymore. I turned around and walked out of the cafe, my head spinning, my chest tight. I needed air. I needed to think. But I couldn't shake the image of them sitting there, so close, so comfortable with each other. Was this what Emma had been hiding from me? Was this why she'd been acting distant lately? I didn't know, but I had to find out. I walked back to my car, my mind racing with questions, none of which seemed to have an answer. As I sat down in the driver's seat, I felt my phone buzz. It was a message from Emma. Where are you? Why did you leave? I told you I'd be upstairs. I stared at the message, my fingers frozen on the screen. She was pretending everything was normal. Pretending like she hadn't just been with Daniel, acting like nothing was out of place. But it was all a lie. I knew it now. I couldn't ignore it any longer. I took a deep breath, gripped the wheel, and started the car. I didn't know what was going to happen when I walked back into that house. But one thing was clear. Things weren't going to be the same anymore. Whatever Emma was hiding, whatever this secret was, I was going to uncover it. And nothing would ever be the same again. The drive back home felt like a slow-motion blur. My hands were clenched tightly around the steering wheel, my knuckles white from the pressure. Every turn felt deliberate, but I wasn't sure where I was going anymore. My thoughts were spinning, all of them circling around one simple fact. Something had changed, and I didn't know if I could go back to the life I thought I had anymore. When I pulled into the driveway, I saw Emma's car parked in the spot where she always left it. I could see a faint light coming from upstairs. She was in the house. She hadn't gone out again. For a moment, I just sat in my car, staring at the house. It was strange. The place looked the same, just like it always had. But everything had changed, hadn't it? It felt like the house was closing in on me, like the walls were whispering things I couldn't hear, things I wasn't supposed to know. I finally opened the car door and stepped out. The night air was cold, biting at my skin as I made my way to the front door. My heart was pounding in my chest, each step feeling heavier than the last. When I reached the door, I paused. There it was again. That feeling. The one that told me that no matter what happened next, my life was about to be irreversibly different. I took a deep breath, pushed the door open, and stepped inside. The house was eerily quiet. I could hear the faint hum of the refrigerator, the soft click of the heating system, but other than that, there was no sound. No footsteps, no voices. I wasn't sure where Emma was, but I knew she wasn't upstairs like she had said in her last message. I walked toward the staircase. I needed to see her. I needed to confront her, get her to tell me the truth. I didn't care how, I didn't care when. I was done being left in the dark. I wasn't some fool. And if she thought I was just going to ignore what I had seen tonight, then she was mistaken. But when I reached the top of the stairs, I stopped. The door to the guest room was slightly ajar, and through the crack, I could see light flickering. The TV. But what caught my attention was Emma's voice. It was soft, like she was trying to keep her words from traveling too far, from reaching me. I couldn't make out everything she was saying, but I could hear enough. I could hear the anxiety in her tone, the desperation in the way she spoke. I don't know if I can keep doing this, Daniel. What if he finds out? What if? Her words were cut off by a muffled sound, and I couldn't breathe. I knew what was happening in that room. I knew it like I knew my own name. It wasn't just a conversation. It wasn't some innocent meeting. They were hiding something from me, something far worse than I had ever imagined. I wanted to barge in, throw open that door, and demand answers. But my feet felt frozen. I couldn't move. I stood there, my hands trembling at my sides, my mind screaming at me to take action, to stop pretending that everything was okay. But I couldn't bring myself to do it. Not yet. I needed to hear more. I needed to understand what was really happening before I confronted her. I stayed in the hallway, my back against the wall, trying to control my breathing. I could hear the faint sound of Emma's voice again, but this time it was quieter, almost as if she were trying to calm herself down. I don't know if I can keep hiding it, she said, her voice shaking. But I don't want to lose him. He's the only one who's ever really understood me. And now everything feels like it's falling apart. I didn't know what to think. I didn't know what I was hearing. Was she talking about me? Was she telling Daniel the truth? The truth that she was hiding from me, the one that had been eating away at my gut for weeks. And then, in the quietest moment, I heard Daniel's voice. It was almost comforting, like he knew exactly what to say to make her feel better. "It'll be okay," he said, his voice smooth, reassuring. "You don't have to worry about him finding out. We're careful. We just have to keep playing this game a little longer." I felt sick to my stomach. Every word, every sentence, was like a punch to my chest. I couldn't stand it anymore. I had to do something. But what? The only option was to walk in and face them. It was the only way I would ever get the truth. I couldn't wait any longer. I pushed open the door and stepped inside, my breath catching in my throat. Emma and Daniel both looked at me, their faces frozen in surprise. Emma's eyes widened, and I saw the panic flare up in them before she quickly masked it with a forced smile. "Nathan," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "What are you doing here?" I didn't answer her. Instead, I turned to Daniel, my eyes locking onto his. I could feel the tension in the room, thick enough to suffocate. "This is where you've been," I said, my voice steady, but my heart pounding. "This is what's been going on. All the lies. All the secrets." Emma opened her mouth to speak, but I held up my hand. Don't try to explain. I've heard enough. I want the truth. Now." There was a long pause, and for a moment, I thought they might stay silent. But then Emma took a deep breath, her shoulders sagging as if the weight of the world had suddenly been lifted. "Fine," she said softly. "You deserve to know. I've been hiding things. But it's not just about us anymore. It's about everything that's happening." Emma's voice was barely a whisper, but it was enough to make my heart skip a beat. "You have to understand, Nathan," she began, her eyes darting nervously between me and Daniel. "It wasn't supposed to happen this way. I never meant for you to find out like this." The words stung, cutting through the silence in the room. I stood frozen in place, my mind racing. Never meant for me to find out. The thought burned. All this time, all these signs, and she had been lying to me? To my face? I didn't know how to respond. 1,000 emotions swirled inside me. Anger, confusion, betrayal, but I couldn't speak. I just watched her, waiting for more. Daniel shifted in his seat, clearly uncomfortable. He opened his mouth as if to speak, but thought better of it, casting a quick glance at Emma. The tension in the room was suffocating, and for the first time, I felt like an intruder in my own home. I wanted answers, but I didn't know where to start. How could she explain this? How could she justify it? Emma's voice broke through the silence again. I met Daniel a few months ago. It started off innocent. We were just talking, getting to know each other. She stopped, running a hand through her hair, her face flushed. But then, it didn't stay innocent. It became something else. Something I didn't plan for. Something else. The words echoed in my mind. I wanted to scream, to shout at her, but I couldn't. I couldn't move. I was rooted to the spot, paralyzed by the reality of what was happening. Was this my life? Was this what I had been living for the past 5 years? It's not just an affair, Nathan, Emma continued, her voice trembling now. It's complicated. Daniel and I, there's a connection between us that I can't explain. It's not something I can just turn off. But I never wanted to hurt you. I swear I didn't. I felt the room closing in on me. The words she spoke didn't make sense. How could she say that? How could she justify any of this, after everything? The lies, the secrecy, the hidden texts, the late nights. Everything was adding up now, and none of it was good. Daniel finally spoke, his voice smooth, almost soothing in contrast to the storm raging inside me. I didn't want to get in the middle of this, he said, his eyes meeting mine for the first time. But I knew what was happening. We both did. This wasn't something either of us could stop. It wasn't about you, Nathan, it was something else entirely. I stared at him, unable to process the words. It wasn't about me? How could this not be about me? I was the one who had been left in the dark, the one who had been betrayed. How could he stand there, saying these things, like he wasn't the cause of all this? I turned back to Emma, my chest tightening. How long, Emma? How long has this been going on? How long have you been lying to me? Her face crumpled, and I saw the tears in her eyes. But I didn't feel sorry for her. Not anymore. It started before you even noticed, she said softly. I didn't plan for any of this, Nathan. I swear. I never wanted to hurt you. I couldn't stop it. Stop. I echoed. You couldn't stop this? You've been lying to me, seeing him behind my back, and you couldn't stop it? My voice was rising now, the anger I had been holding back threatening to explode. And you think I'm just supposed to sit here and listen to this? To accept it? Daniel opened his mouth to say something, but I cut him off. I don't want to hear anything from you. I snapped. You're the last person who should be speaking right now. You've been sleeping with my wife, lying to my face for God knows how long. And now you're telling me it's complicated? No, I'm done with this. I felt the heat rising in my chest, the rush of adrenaline flooding my body. I wanted to do something, anything, to make sense of all this, to make them both understand how much they had hurt me, how they had destroyed everything we had. But no matter how much I wanted to lash out, something held me back. Maybe it was the realization that this moment wasn't about revenge or anger. It was about me finding out the truth. Finally, Emma stood up slowly, her voice shaky as she spoke again. Nathan, please. I never meant for things to get this far. I never thought I'd have to choose between you and him. I thought I could keep it all separate. She paused, taking a deep breath. But I can't keep living this lie anymore. I'm sorry. Her apology felt hollow, like it was just words strung together with no real weight behind them. My chest ached, and I realized I had stopped breathing. Everything we had built, every moment of trust, had just come crashing down. I didn't know what to say. I didn't know how to respond to her apology, to the pain that was now coursing through me. There was no going back from this. There was no repairing what was broken. Daniel stood up too, looking almost guilty now. Nathan, I didn't want to hurt you, he said, his tone more sincere than before. But Emma and I, we had something. I'm sorry. The words felt like daggers. They stung with the truth, the reality of what had happened. They had been together. Behind my back, in my own house, they had been making plans, forging a connection, living a life I didn't know about. I turned away from them both, my mind spinning. I needed to get out. I needed to breathe, to think. But I couldn't seem to move. It was as though the weight of the world had settled on my shoulders, and I was stuck in this place, trapped in the pain they had caused. Get out, I finally said, my voice low, broken. Both of you. Now. The door clicked shut behind them, leaving me alone in the silence. Alone with my thoughts. Alone with the truth. The silence in the house after they left was almost unbearable. I stood in the middle of the living room, staring at the empty doorway. My mind was still reeling from everything Emma had said, everything Daniel had added. Their words swirled around in my head, each one hitting me harder than the last. I couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe what had just happened. All this time, I had trusted Emma. All this time, I had believed in us. But it was a lie. It was all a lie. She had been with him. Behind my back, right under my nose. The betrayal wasn't just about the affair, it was everything. The lies. The secrets. The silence. I walked around the house in a daze, not sure what I was doing. I didn't want to sit down, I didn't want to think, but I couldn't stop. I wanted to scream, to destroy something. Anything that could make me feel like I wasn't trapped in this nightmare. I grabbed my phone off the counter. I didn't know why. Maybe I thought if I looked at it, I could find something that made sense. But when I unlocked it, there was a message waiting for me from Emma. Please, Nathan. I never wanted to hurt you. I'll explain everything when you're ready. Explain everything? How could she explain this? How could she possibly make sense of what had happened? How could she justify anything? I couldn't look at the screen anymore. I threw the phone down on the couch, and it slid off onto the floor with a soft thud. My chest felt tight. My hands were shaking. I couldn't breathe. I needed air. I needed to get out of this house, away from everything that reminded me of her, of them. I went outside, my feet carrying me to the backyard without even thinking. The cold night air hit me like a slap, but I welcomed it. It cleared my mind, even if just a little. I stood there, staring at the stars above, but all I could see was the image of Emma and Daniel in the cafe. Their closeness, the way they touched each other, the way they spoke to each other as if I wasn't even a part of the equation. I felt sick. I felt betrayed. But more than that, I felt stupid. How could I have been so blind? How could I have missed all the signs? The late nights, the strange texts, the way she acted distant, but I ignored it all. I believed the lies. I wasn't sure how long I stood there, but eventually, I heard the sound of footsteps behind me. I turned quickly, expecting to see Emma, but it wasn't her. It was Daniel. My heart skipped a beat, and I felt my blood boil. He had the audacity to come back here, to show up after everything that had happened. What was he thinking? I thought you might need to hear this from me, Daniel said, his voice calm, too calm for the situation. I shouldn't have left things the way they were. But Emma was right. We couldn't keep pretending. She couldn't keep pretending. And neither could I. I stared at him, stunned. He had the nerve to stand there, in my backyard, speaking like we were equals, like he hadn't just torn my life apart. You think you can just come here and explain yourself? I asked, my voice colder than I felt. You think there's some justification for what you've done? I didn't say there was, he replied, taking a step forward, his hands in his pockets. But I think you deserve to hear it from me, not just from her. I owe you that much. I was shaking with rage, but I didn't move. I didn't know if I wanted to hear what he had to say. I didn't know if I was ready for any more truth, any more lies. But a part of me needed to know. I needed to understand how deep this went. Go on, I said, the words slipping out before I could stop myself. Daniel sighed, looking down at his feet before meeting my eyes again. Emma and I, we didn't plan for this. We didn't mean for it to happen, but when it did, we couldn't stop it. There's something between us that neither of us can control. It's not just physical. It's deeper. But I'm not here to make excuses for what we've done. I'm here to tell you that I never meant to hurt you. I never meant for any of this to happen. Then what were you doing? I demanded, my voice rising, my anger spilling over. You come into my home, into my life, and you act like nothing's wrong. You think sorry is enough to fix this. Daniel took a step back, his eyes softening slightly. No, it's not enough, he said, his voice quieter now. But I didn't want to be the one who broke your marriage. That wasn't what I came here for. But you did, I said through gritted teeth. You broke it. You and her, you both ruined everything. There was a long pause. Daniel didn't speak right away. He just stood there, watching me, as though waiting for me to calm down. But I couldn't calm down. My world had just been shattered, and all I could feel was the ache in my chest. Do you really think she wants to leave you? He asked, his tone almost pitying. I mean, do you really believe that? She's not leaving you. Not because of me, anyway. I shook my head, my thoughts swirling in confusion. What was he saying? Was he trying to make me feel better? Was he telling me the truth about her feelings? I couldn't tell anymore. All I knew was that everything felt out of control. But before I could say anything else, Daniel turned and started walking away. He didn't look back. He didn't need to say anything more. As I stood there in the dark, watching him leave, I couldn't help but wonder, was he right? Was Emma really going to leave me? Or was I just a pawn in some twisted game they were playing? I didn't know. I didn't have the answers. And for the first time in my life, I didn't know what to do next. The night stretched on, but everything around me had gone still, as if the world had paused in that one agonizing moment. I stood in the backyard, the cold air biting at my skin, but I didn't feel it. My body was numb. It was as if all the emotion I'd been holding back, the anger, the hurt, the disbelief, had drained out of me, leaving only a hollow emptiness behind. Daniel had left without another word, walking away into the night like he was walking away from the wreckage he had caused. And now, I was standing there, alone, with only the sound of my own breath filling the void. I walked back inside without thinking, my mind too consumed to focus on anything but the images of Emma and Daniel. The thought of them together kept replaying in my mind. The quiet touches, the soft smiles, the whispers, they weren't just innocent. They were intimate. I glanced at the clock, almost 4 a.m. Emma hadn't come downstairs. She hadn't even texted me after Daniel left. Was she still upstairs, hiding from me? Did she even care what I was going through? Or had she already made up her mind about what she wanted? I didn't know, but I was about to find out. I climbed the stairs slowly, each step feeling heavier than the last. I knew this moment was inevitable. I couldn't avoid it any longer. I had to confront her. I couldn't let her keep hiding in that guest room, pretending like everything was fine. If she wanted to speak the truth, if she wanted to save what little was left of this marriage, it had to happen now. I stood in front of the door to the guest room. I could hear the faint hum of the air conditioning, but nothing else. It was so quiet. Too quiet. I raised my hand to knock, but then I stopped. I couldn't make myself do it. I couldn't knock on that door as if nothing had happened. Instead, I opened it, pushing the door wide, my heart pounding in my chest. There she was, sitting on the bed, her face buried in her hands. She didn't look up when I walked in. She didn't say a word. It was like she had been waiting for me, waiting for this moment to come. I stood in the doorway for a few seconds, just staring at her. I didn't know what to say. I didn't know how to start this conversation because nothing I said could undo the mess we were in. I had no more questions. There was only the truth that had already been spilled, and now I needed to hear her side of it. I needed to hear her say it. Say that everything she and Daniel had was real. I saw you with him, Emma. I said finally, my voice quieter than I intended. I saw you at the cafe. I saw how you looked at him. She looked up at me then, her eyes red and swollen from crying. There was a flicker of guilt in her gaze, but it was quickly replaced by something else, something I couldn't quite place. I didn't want you to see that, she whispered, her voice barely audible. I didn't want you to find out this way. I thought I could keep it from you. But I guess I was wrong. I didn't respond. I just stood there, watching her. My mind was still processing everything. The betrayal, the lies, the fact that she had kept something like this hidden for so long. It felt like a punch to the gut every time I thought about it. You lied to me, I said, the words coming out in a harsh breath. All this time, you lied to me. And for what? For him? She flinched at the sharpness of my words. But she didn't look away. She was steady now, like she had accepted that I wasn't going to go easy on her. It's not like that, Nathan, she said, her voice trembling. I never meant for you to find out like this. I never meant to hurt you. But it's not as simple as just leaving him. It's not that easy. Then why did you keep it a secret? I asked, my voice rising with every question I had left unanswered. Why didn't you tell me? Why didn't you just be honest with me? Her eyes filled with tears again, and she wiped them away quickly. I was scared. Scared of what you'd think. Scared of losing you. I thought maybe if I just kept it hidden, it would go away. But I was wrong. I know that now. The pain in her voice cut through me, but I couldn't let it affect me. I couldn't. Because the truth was, I didn't know if I could forgive her. I didn't know if I could live with the fact that she had been with someone else, that she had betrayed everything we had built. I didn't know if I could ever look at her the same way again. You've been hiding this for how long, Emma? I asked, my voice quieter now, but still heavy with emotion. How long have you been lying to me? Telling me everything was fine? Months, she replied, her voice small, barely above a whisper. I thought I could stop it. I thought I could go back to the way things were. But it just kept happening. I couldn't stop seeing him. I didn't want to hurt you, but I couldn't let go of him either. Her confession hit me like a wave, crashing over everything. I wanted to scream, to yell at her, but I couldn't. I just stood there, trying to process what she was saying. She had been seeing him behind my back, and I had been blind to it. I don't know what to say, Emma, I said finally. I don't know how to fix this. I don't know if I can. She looked up at me, her eyes filled with regret. I don't want to lose you, Nathan. I love you. I never wanted to hurt you. I was just lost. And now, I don't know what to do. I stood there, staring at her, my mind spinning. Everything had been turned upside down. The life I thought I knew, the marriage I had been holding on to, was no longer real. I didn't know if I could fix this. But one thing was clear, nothing would ever be the same again. I stood there, motionless, as the weight of her words settled into my chest. The silence stretched between us, thick with everything we had just shared. The betrayal, the pain, the confusion. It was all hanging in the air, suffocating both of us. But even in that moment, something shifted. I wasn't sure what it was. Maybe it was the exhaustion of the whole situation, or maybe it was the sincerity in Emma's eyes as she looked at me. I had been so focused on the hurt, on the broken trust, but as I looked at her, I realized something I hadn't considered before. We were both human. We both made mistakes, and we both had a choice. You're right, I said quietly, my voice calmer than I expected. I don't know if I can forgive you right now, but I also know that walking away without talking about this, without giving us a chance, is not going to solve anything. Emma's eyes widened, like she hadn't expected me to say that. She opened her mouth to speak, but I held up a hand to stop her. I'm not saying I'm okay with what happened, I continued. I'm not saying I understand it. But what I am saying is that I'm not ready to give up on us. Not yet. She blinked at me, clearly caught off guard, but there was a spark of hope in her expression that hadn't been there before. I think we've both been running from the truth, Emma, I went on. And I can't keep pretending that everything's fine. But if we want to move forward, we need to stop hiding. We need to be honest. With each other. About everything. She nodded slowly, her tears starting to fade as the tension in her body eased. It wasn't the end of the road. It wasn't even close. But for the first time, I felt like we were facing each other honestly, without the shadows of lies between us. I'm sorry, Nathan, she whispered again, her voice thick with emotion. I know I've hurt you. I don't deserve you. But I swear, I never stopped loving you. I just got lost. I stepped forward, my heart still heavy, but lighter than it had been in days. I don't know what the future holds, Emma. I don't know if we can go back to what we had. But maybe we can start over. One step at a time. She looked at me, her face softening, the lines of regret and guilt slowly fading as she saw the sincerity in my eyes. For the first time in a long time, I felt like there might be a way out of this darkness, a way to rebuild something better than what we'd had before. I took a deep breath, exhaling slowly. The road ahead would be long. It would require patience, understanding, and a lot of hard work. But the truth was, I wasn't ready to give up on the woman I had loved for so many years. Not yet. We don't have to have all the answers tonight, I said. But we can start fresh. We can try. Emma gave me a tentative smile, and for the first time in what felt like forever, I saw a glimmer of hope in her eyes. It wasn't going to be easy. It was going to take time. But maybe, just maybe, we could make it through this. Together. And with that, we both took a step forward, not knowing where it would lead, but ready to face it, together.